Admiral De Hyon stood in the observation room of the United Earth Defense Headquarters, staring at the holographic display that floated in front of him. The blue light reflected off his weathered face, casting shadows across the scars he had earned during the Outer Rim conflicts 15 years ago. He was 53 years old now, and every one of those years showed in the lines around his eyes. The data in front of him made no sense. His deep space scouts had detected something in the void sector, a region of space that most species avoided without really knowing why. The readings were unlike anything he had seen in his 30 years of military service. Energy signatures that appeared and disappeared, gravitational anomalies that bent space in impossible ways, and something else, something that made his veteran instincts scream danger. "Admiral, Ambassador Zhu Wu is here," said Captain Sung Min, his tactical officer. The young man was barely 30, but he had a sharp mind that De Hyon trusted completely. Ji Wu entered the room with her usual confidence. She was 42. A career diplomat who had spent the last decade representing Earth at the Galactic Council. She wore the formal blue uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps, and her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style. But De Hyon could see the concern in her eyes. "Show me what you found," she said without greeting. They had worked together long enough to skip the pleasantries when something serious was happening. De Hyon gestured at the display. 3 weeks ago, Scout Ship Horizon detected these anomalies in the void sector. We sent 2 more ships to confirm. They all reported the same thing before we pulled them back. We studied the data carefully. This energy signature, it's old, really old. Dr. Tae-hee from the Xenorchaeology department thinks it might be connected to the precursor civilization, Sung-min added. The ones that existed millions of years ago, before any of the current council species even evolved. "And you think something is waking up there," Ji-woo said. It was not a question, De Hyon nodded. "I think something very dangerous is waking up, and I think we need to warn the council to stay away from that sector." Ji-woo sighed. She knew what that meant. They won't listen, they won't. We've been council members for 50 years, and they still treat us like children who just learned to walk. "Then we need to make them listen," De Hyon said firmly. "Because if they send ships into that sector without understanding what they're facing, people are going to die." 2 days later, Ji-woo stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Council. The room was enormous, built to house representatives from 73 different species. The architecture was a mix of styles from across the galaxy, meant to show unity and cooperation. But Ji-woo had learned that the council was less about cooperation and more about maintaining the power of the old, established species. Council Prime Veltharus sat on the highest platform, looking down at the other representatives. He was from the Velkath species, reptilian beings who had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years. His scales were a deep purple, and his eyes were cold and calculating. He had never hidden his contempt for humanity and their brief time in space. Ambassador Ji-woo of Earth requests to address the council, announced. The chamber AI.VLT Haris waved one clawed hand dismissively. "Make it brief, Ambassador. We have important matters to discuss today." Ji-woo walked to the speaking platform, her back straight. She had presented to the council many times, and she refused to show how much their attitude bothered her. She activated her own holographic display, showing the data from the void sector. "Honored council members," she began, "Earth has detected dangerous anomalies in the void sector. Our analysis suggests these are not natural phenomena. We believe something ancient and potentially hostile is active in that region. We strongly recommend establishing a quarantine zone and avoiding all contact until we understand what we're dealing with." Silence fell over the chamber. Then, slowly, laughter began to spread. It started with a few representatives and grew until nearly half the council was laughing openly. Veltharus raised his hand for silence. "Ambassador, your concern is noted. However, Earth has been a spacefaring civilization for barely a century. We have explored the galaxy for millennia. We have faced true threats and survived. With respect, Council Prime, your scouts detected energy readings they don't understand," interrupted Veltharus. This is not surprising, given your limited experience. What you call dangerous is likely nothing more than natural stellar phenomena. Another council member spoke up, a being made of crystalline structures who communicated through light patterns. The void sector has always had unusual readings. This is not new information. Jiwoo kept her voice calm and professional. Owls and archaeologists believe this is connected to the precursor civilization. The patterns match references in ancient texts from multiple species. Ancient legends and superstitions, said Veltharus dismissively. I expected better from humanity than to come before this council with ghost stories. This is not a ghost story, Jiwoo said, her patience starting to fray. This is a legitimate threat assessment based on concrete data. Veltharus leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. Let me be clear, Ambassador. The Galactic Council has maintained peace and order in this galaxy for 10,000 years. We have dealt with pirate fleets, rogue AI, dimensional breaches, and threats your species cannot imagine. We do not need Earth's permission or advice on how to handle stellar anomalies, the Council murmured in agreement. Jiwoo felt her frustration growing, but she knew she had to try one more time. Council Prime, I am not questioning your experience. I am asking you to consider new information. Something is happening in that sector that we don't fully understand. Caution would be wise. Caution is for the weak and the inexperienced, Veltharus said coldly. The Council has decided to send the Grand Armada to investigate this sector personally. We will determine what is causing these readings and deal with it appropriately. If there are primitive species hiding there causing these disturbances, they will learn to respect Council authority. Zhu felt her heart sink. You're sending your military fleet? Council Prime, please reconsider. At least send a small science vessel first. The matter is decided, Veltharus announced. This council will not be dictated to by fear and paranoia, especially from species who barely understand space travel. Fleet Marshal Draxus will lead the Grand Armada into the Void Sector within the month. We will show Earth and any other doubters what true galactic power looks like. The session ended and Guwu left the chamber feeling defeated. She immediately contacted Daehyun through her secure communication device. They wouldn't listen, she said as soon as his face appeared on the screen. They're sending their entire Grand Armada. 5,000 ships. Daehyun's expression darkened. When? 3 weeks. Maybe less. Then we need to be ready, Daehyun said quietly. Because when this goes wrong, they're going to expect us to fix it? That evening, Daehyun gathered his senior officers in a secure briefing room. Sung-min was there, along with Lieutenant Haewon, their best communications specialist, and Commander Young-soo, who headed Earth's intelligence division. The Council is making a mistake, Daehyun told them. A potentially catastrophic one. I want our deep space monitoring network on full alert. I want every sensor we have pointed at the void sector. And I want contingency plans for a rescue operation, though I pray we won't need them. You think the entire Council fleet is in danger? Asked Haewon, her eyes wide. I think they're walking into something they don't understand, Daehyun said. And arrogance has killed more soldiers than any enemy weapon ever did. We tried to warn them. They wouldn't listen. Now all we can do is watch and be ready to respond. Sung-min looked at the star charts displayed on the wall. Sir, if something happens to 5,000 Council ships, what could Earth's fleet possibly do against whatever destroyed them? Daehyun smiled grimly. We could do what humanity has always done best, Captain. We adapt, we learn, and we never, ever underestimate the unknown. 3 weeks passed in tense preparation. Admiral Daehyun had not slept well since the Council made their decision. Every night he reviewed the data from the Void Sector, looking for any pattern that might explain what they were dealing with. Every morning he woke up knowing that humanity's warning had been ignored. And thousands of lives might be at risk because of political arrogance, Lieutenant. One had barely left the communications center during this time. She was 28 years old, brilliant with signals and data transmission, and she had personally overseen the deployment of Earth's monitoring network around the Void Sector. Dozens of stealth satellites now watched the region, recording everything on multiple frequencies. Admiral, the Council fleet is approaching the sector boundary, Hay-1 reported through the communication system. Her voice was steady, but Daehyun could hear the tension underneath. Daehyun walked quickly to the monitoring center, where massive screens showed real-time data from their satellites. Commander Young-soo was already there, his intelligence team working at their stations, recording everything. On the main screen, they could see the Grand Armada in all its glory. 5,000 warships, representing 73 different species and 10,000 years of technological advancement. The flagship alone was 30 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that could destroy planets. It was the largest military force ever assembled by the Galactic Council, and they were using it to investigate what they believed was nothing more than unusual stellar activity. "They're broadcasting on all Council frequencies," said Hay-1. Putting the audio through the speakers. Fleet Marshal Drax's voice filled the room. He was from the Drax species, beings who had conquered 15 star systems before joining the Council. His voice was deep and filled with confidence. "This is Fleet Marshal Draxus to all Council members. The Grand Armada has reached the Void Sector. Preliminary scans show nothing but empty space and stellar dust. Earth's concerns appear to have been greatly exaggerated." Daehyun clenched his jaw but said nothing. On the screens, the massive fleet began to cross into the Void Sector, their formation perfect and intimidating. Young-Soo was watching his own set of monitors, ones that showed data the Council wasn't monitoring. "Admiral, I'm seeing electromagnetic interference building. It's subtle, but it's there." "Increase sensor sensitivity," Daehyun ordered. "Record everything." Hay-1's fingers moved rapidly across her controls. "Done, but Admiral, this interference. It's not coming from the sector itself. It's forming around the fleet." That got Daehyun's attention. "Forming around them? Like they're being targeted? Maybe, or scanned? I can't tell which." On the speakers, Marshal Draxus was speaking again. "All ships maintain formation. Science vessels begin detailed scans of the region. Command expects full reports within." The electromagnetic interference suddenly spiked on every monitor. Hay-1 gasped as her screens lit up with warnings. "Admiral, massive energy surge. It's coming from multiple points inside the sector. Get me visual." Daehyun commanded. The main screen switched to show the view from their closest satellite. The Council fleet was still moving forward, but something was happening around them. Space itself seemed to be rippling, like water when a stone is thrown into it. Marshal Drax's voice came through again, but this time there was confusion in it. "What is that?" "All ships, battle stations. Unknown energy signatures detected." Then the transmission cut off. Not with static or noise, but with a clean silence that was somehow worse. "Hay-1, restore communications," said Daehyun, his voice urgent. "I'm trying, sir. But there's nothing to restore. The signal just stopped." Hay-1's face had gone pale as she worked her controls frantically. "Admiral, I'm not reading any Council transmissions." "Not from any of their ships?" "Switch to our satellite feed," Young-soo said quickly. The screen changed to show the space where the Grand Armada had been moments ago. Daehyun felt his blood run cold. The space was empty. 5,000 warships, 2 million crew members, the pride of galactic civilization, were simply gone. "What happened to them?" asked one of the junior officers, his voice barely a whisper. "Scan for debris," Daehyun ordered, forcing himself to stay calm. "Scan for life pods, emergency beacons, anything." The monitoring team worked in silence for several minutes. Hay-1 checked every frequency, every possible signal. Young-soo's intelligence team ran analysis after analysis on the sensor data, but the result was always the same. "Nothing," Young-soo finally said. "No wreckage? No energy signatures from their reactors? No distress signals? It's like they were never there." "That's impossible," said Hay-1. 5,000 ships can't just disappear. Even if they were all destroyed instantly, there would be debris. There would be something." Daehyun stared at the empty space on the screen. He had been a military officer long enough to know what death looked like. He had seen ships destroyed in battle, had attended funerals for fallen crew members. But this was different. This was not destruction. This was something else entirely, and that terrified him more than any explosion could. "Continue monitoring," he said quietly. "Record everything. And someone get me Ambassador Jiwoo. She needs to know what just happened." Within an hour, the news had spread through the Galactic Council. Panic began to set in as species realized their most powerful military force had vanished without a trace. Council Prime Veltharus called an emergency session, and Jiwoo attended via holographic projection from Earth. The Grand Chamber was in chaos. Representatives were shouting at each other in dozens of languages, accusations flying in every direction. Some blamed Earth for putting a curse on the fleet. Others claimed it was a secret weapon from a rival species. Fear had replaced arrogance, and it was not an improvement. Veltharus finally managed to restore order by threatening to expel anyone who continued to disrupt the session. His purple scales had darkened with stress, and his cold eyes now showed real fear. "Ambassador Jiwoo," he said, his voice tight. "Your planet detected the anomalies first. You must have some explanation for what happened to our fleet." Jiwoo kept her expression neutral, though inside she felt anger and frustration. "Council Prime, Earth warned you that the Void Sector was dangerous. We advised caution and further study before sending any ships, especially a military fleet. You chose to ignore that warning. We need answers, not reminders of past discussions," shouted a council member from the insectoid Thesa species. "The answer is that we don't know what happened," Jiwoo said honestly. "Our monitoring systems recorded the fleet entering the sector, an energy surge, and then nothing. Whatever is in that sector is beyond our current understanding." Veltharus leaned forward. "Then Earth must send a rescue mission. Your species predicted this. You must have some way to counter it." Jiwoo could not believe what she was hearing. "Council Prime, with respect, we warned you not to send ships there. We don't have a counter because we were trying to avoid this situation entirely." "But you must try," said another representative. 2 million council citizens are missing. Their families demand action. And what makes you think an Earth rescue mission would fare any better than your Grand Armada?" Jiwoo asked. "Because you seem to understand this threat better than we do," Veltharus said, and for the first time since Jiwoo had known him, he sounded humble. "Please, Ambassador. We made a mistake. We should have listened to your warning, but now we need your help." Jiwoo was silent for a moment. She looked at the frightened faces of the council representatives, species who had treated humanity with contempt for 50 years. Part of her wanted to refuse to let them face the consequences of their arrogance, but a larger part of her knew that 2 million lives were at stake, and they deserved a chance at rescue regardless of their leader's mistakes. "I will need to consult with Admiral Daehyun and our military command," she said finally. "We will contact you within 12 hours with our decision." After the session ended, Jiwoo contacted Daehyun immediately. His face appeared on her screen, and she could see he had not slept. "They want us to mount a rescue operation," she said without preamble. "I know. Young-Soo has been monitoring their communications." Daehyun rubbed his eyes tiredly. "I don't know if we can help them. Whatever took those ships is powerful beyond our understanding. But we have to try, don't we?" Daehyun nodded slowly. "We have to try. Because if we don't, those 2 million people have no chance at all. And because if we can figure out what happened, maybe we can prevent it from happening again. What do you need?" Jiwoo asked. "Time to plan. Better data. And probably a miracle." Daehyun smiled grimly. "I'll assemble our best people. We'll go into that sector, but we'll do it our way. Carefully, methodically, using every advantage we have. The council won't like waiting?" "The council can wait," Daehyun said firmly. "They ignored our warning and lost 5,000 ships. This time, they're going to do things humanity's way." The Ed's Indomitable cut through space at the head of Earth's rescue fleet. It was not an impressive sight compared to the council's Grand Armada. Only 50 ships, the largest barely 2 kilometers long. But Admiral De Hayan had not chosen these ships for their size or firepower. He had chosen them for their crews, their technology, and their ability to adapt. De Hayan stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the void sector grow closer on the main view screen. Captain Seung-min stood beside him, reviewing their tactical plans for the 100th time. At the communications station, Lieutenant Hae-won monitored a network of communication buoys they had deployed behind them, ensuring they would maintain contact with Earth no matter what happened. Fleet status? De Hayan asked. All ships report ready, sir, Seung-min replied. Sensor networks are active. Communication buoys are online. Emergency protocols are loaded and ready. This was the human way. The Council had sent 5,000 ships in a show of overwhelming force. Earth was sending 50 ships with overwhelming preparation. Every vessel had multiple backup systems. Every crew member knew exactly what to do if communications failed. Every ship carried emergency beacons that would activate automatically if something went wrong. Bring Dr. Behram to the bridge, De Hayan ordered. A few minutes later, Dr. Behram arrived. She was 35 years old, a specialist in xenorchaeology and ancient civilizations. She had spent the last 2 weeks studying every piece of information that existed about the precursor civilization and the void sector. Her eyes were tired from lack of sleep, but they were sharp with intelligence. Admiral, she greeted him with a small bow. Doctor, tell me again what we might be facing. Behram pulled up a holographic display showing ancient texts from multiple civilizations. Before the current Council species became spacefaring, there were others. We call them the precursors. They built structures that still exist across the galaxy, monuments that our best technology cannot duplicate. Then, approximately 2 million years ago, they vanished. Every single one of them, gone in less than a generation. What happened to them? Asked Seung-min. Nobody knows. But several ancient texts mention something called the Silence, a test or a judgment that appeared when civilizations reached a certain level of advancement. Species that failed this test disappeared. Species that passed it, well, we have no record of any species passing it. Comforting, muttered Hae-won from her station. The void sector was marked on precursor star maps, Behram continued. They put warning symbols around it. Symbols that translate roughly to proving ground or testing place. De Hayan absorbed this information. So you think the Council fleet was tested and failed? I think something in that sector has been waiting for millions of years, waiting for species to reach it. What happens then, I cannot say. Admiral, we're approaching the sector boundary, announced the navigation officer. De Hayan took a deep breath. All ships, this is Admiral De Hayan. Remember your training. Stay in formation. Maintain constant communication. If anything unusual happens, report it immediately. We're not here to prove humanity's strength. We're here to find our missing people and bring them home. Proceed at 1/4 speed. The fleet crossed into the void sector slowly and carefully. Unlike the Council's confident charge, Earth's ships moved like hunters in unknown territory, every sensor active, every eye watching for danger. Electromagnetic interference building, reported Hae-won. Just like before. But it's weaker. Maybe because we're moving slower. Keep monitoring it, De Hayan said. I want to know if it changes. Chief Engineer Jinho's voice came through from the engine room. He was 48, a veteran who could keep a ship running with spare parts and determination. Admiral, the interference is affecting our power systems slightly. Nothing critical, but uncompensating. Good work, Chief. For 2 hours, the fleet moved deeper into the sector. The interference grew stronger, but remained manageable. Then Seung-min's tactical station lit up with alerts. Contact, he called out. I'm reading a solid object ahead, large, it's not moving. Show me, De Hayan ordered. The view screen displayed an image that made everyone on the bridge go silent. It was a Council dreadnought, one of the largest ships in their fleet. It was intact, its hull showing no signs of damage. But it was floating dead in space, all its lights off, no power signatures at all. Scan for life signs? Daehyun said quietly. Scanning ... No life signs detected? But no bodies either? No, sir. The ship appears to be completely empty. Daehyun made his decision. Sungmin, take a boarding team. I want to know what happened to that ship and its crew. 30 minutes later, Sungmin and his team were aboard the ghost ship. Their suit cameras transmitted everything back to the Indomitable, and what they found was deeply disturbing. The ship was intact. The lights came on when the boarding team provided auxiliary power. The corridors were clean and undamaged. In the mess hall, they found food that was still fresh, as if the crew had been eating when something happened. In the command center, they found stations still active, showing data from the moment the ship went dark. It's like everyone just vanished mid-action, Sungmin reported, his voice echoing in his helmet. Admiral, look at this! His camera focused on the captain's chair. A datapad lay on the seat, showing a partially written log entry. The last words were, "Unknown energy signature detected." Attempting to nothing else? Daehyun asked. Nothing, sir. Whatever happened, it was instantaneous. The crew didn't even have time to finish their sentences. Sungmin's team moved through the ship systematically, documenting everything. In engineering, they found something that Bo-ram found very interesting. The ship's AI core has been removed, Sungmin reported. Not destroyed or damaged, removed, surgically, I would say. The extraction was precise, professional. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. Back on the Indomitable, Bo-ram studied the images with intense focus. They took the AI core, the ship's memory, everything it knew. Why? Asked Daehyun. To learn about them. To study them. Admiral, I think the crew might not be dead. I think they were taken along with the AI cores from every ship. Taken where? Deeper into the sector, look. Bo-ram pulled up new sensor data. Jin-ho detected faint power signatures when we first entered this region. I've been analyzing them while Captain Sungmin was aboard the derelict. These signatures form a pattern. A geometric pattern that points toward the center of the void sector. On the display, dozens of tiny power readings appeared, scattered across thousands of cubic kilometers of space. Individually, they meant nothing. But when connected, they formed a three-dimensional arrow pointing deeper into the darkness. It's a trail, Sungmin said over the communications link. Someone left us a trail to follow, or a trap, said Haewon. Maybe both, Daehyun acknowledged. But it's the only lead we have. Sungmin, return to your ship? All vessels maintain formation. We follow the power signatures. Jinho's voice came through from engineering. Admiral, following that trail will take us to the deepest part of the sector. The interference will get much stronger. Can we handle it? Maybe, probably, ask me again when we get there. The fleet moved forward, following the breadcrumb trail of power signatures. More derelict council ships appeared, all in the same condition. Empty but intact, their AI cores surgically removed, their crews vanished without a trace. How many ships are we up to? Daehyun asked after the 10th derelict. 47 confirmed, replied Sungmin. All empty. All the same. Hours passed as they penetrated deeper into the sector. The electromagnetic interference grew stronger, but Jinho and his engineering teams across the fleet managed to keep the ships running. The communication buoys maintained their connection to Earth, though the signal was getting weaker. Then Haewon gasped. Admiral, I'm reading something massive ahead. Really massive. It's not a ship. I don't know what it is. Put it on screen. The view screen flickered and then showed an image that defied easy description. It was a sphere, perfectly smooth and impossibly large. Daehyun's tactical computer estimated it was over 1,000 kilometers in diameter. The surface appeared to be made of a dark material that absorbed light, making it look like a hole in space. What is that? Whispered Sung-min. Bo-ram was staring at the sphere with wide eyes. It's precursor technology? It has to be. That size, that construction ... No modern species could build something like that. I'm detecting symbols on the surface, said Haewon. transmitting to Dr. Ram's station. Ram studied the symbols intensely. Her hands were shaking as she translated. These are precursor glyphs. Old ones, they say. Here lies the test. Here lies the answer. Enter and be measured. Measured for what? Asked Daehyun. That part isn't clear. But Admiral, this is what we've been looking for. This is where the Council fleet was taken. I'm certain of it. Daehyun stared at the massive structure. Every instinct told him that approaching it was dangerous. But 2 million people were missing, and this sphere was the only clue to their location. Scan for weapons defenses. Anything that might be a threat, he ordered. Scanning ... Negative, no obvious weapon systems, no shields. But Admiral, I'm reading a single docking port opening on the surface. It's sized for a ship about our size. The docking process was surprisingly smooth. The Indomitable connected to the port on the massive sphere without any difficulty, as if the structure had been waiting for them. Admiral Daehyun stood in the airlock with Captain Seung-min and Dr. Ram, wearing environmental suits as a precaution. Behind them, the security team waited with weapons ready. Atmosphere on the other side reads as breathable, reported Seung-min, checking his scanner. Earth normal temperature and pressure. That's convenient. Too convenient, said Daehyun. Stay alert. The airlock opened, revealing a corridor that seemed to stretch forever. The walls were made of the same dark material as the exterior, but they emitted a soft blue light that made everything visible. The corridor was exactly sized for humans, which Ram noted with interest. It's adapting to us, she said quietly. This structure is intelligent, and it's making itself comfortable for human visitors. They walked forward carefully, the security team spreading out to cover all directions. The corridor curved gently, and after several minutes of walking, they entered a vast chamber. The room was circular, at least a kilometer across, and the ceiling disappeared into darkness above them. In the center of the room stood something that looked like a pillar of light. It pulsed gently, and as they approached, Daehyun realized it was not solid. It was pure energy, contained and shaped by technology he could not begin to understand. Welcome, said a voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It spoke in perfect Korean, the language Daehyun thought in, though he had been speaking English since they entered the sector. I am the architect. I have been waiting for you. The security team raised their weapons, but Daehyun held up his hand. Hold your fire. A wise decision, said the architect. Violence would be pointless here. I am not a being you can harm with physical weapons. I am an artificial intelligence created by the precursors over 2 million years ago. The Ram stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. The precursors created you? Why? What is your purpose? I am a test, the architect replied. A filter. A way to determine which species have evolved beyond their primitive instincts and which have not. What happened to the Galactic Council fleet? Daehyun demanded. Where are the 2 million crew members? They are here within this structure, alive and unharmed. They are in stasis while I educate them. Educate them about what? About humility. About the danger of arrogance. About the truth that technological advancement without wisdom leads only to destruction. The pillar of light shifted, and images appeared in the air around them. They saw the Council fleet entering the sector. Saw the energy surge that had transported them here, saw the empty ships left behind. The Council species arrived with weapons charged and shields raised, the architect explained. Their first action upon detecting my presence was to demand my surrender. Their second action was to fire upon me. They did not attempt communication. They did not attempt understanding. They saw something unknown and immediately chose violence. Seung-min looked at the images in horror. They attacked you? Yes, and so they failed the test. Any species that reaches this sector is given a choice, though they do not always recognize it as such. They can approach with curiosity and caution, or they can approach with aggression and arrogance. The Council chose aggression. Therefore, their people are being taught the lessons they refuse to learn. Daehyun felt a chill run down his spine. And what happens to species that fail your test? That depends on whether they can learn. The Council fleet will remain in stasis until their leaders demonstrate genuine understanding of their mistakes. It could be weeks, years, or centuries. I am patient, and if they never learn, then they remain here forever, a warning to others. Doram spoke up, her voice shaking slightly. The precursors. They vanished 2 million years ago? Did they fail your test? The precursors created me to test themselves, the architect said, and there was something like sadness in its voice. They had become so powerful, so advanced, that they feared they had lost their wisdom. They feared they would destroy themselves through their own arrogance. So they created me to judge them, to test whether their power had outgrown their wisdom. Did they pass? Doram asked. No, they failed. And because they were wise enough to create an honest test, they accepted the consequences. The precursors went into the same stasis that now holds the Council fleet. They remain here still, learning, growing, understanding what they lost. Perhaps one day they will emerge. Perhaps not. The room was silent for a long moment. Daehyun tried to process what he was hearing. An entire civilization had created a test for itself and failed it. Now another civilization had stumbled into the same test unprepared. Why did you contact us? Daehyun asked finally. Why allow Earth's fleet to approach when you took the Council's fleet? Because you are different, the architect replied. You sent a warning. You tried to prevent the Council from coming here. You attempted to save those who mocked you and dismissed your concerns. This demonstrated something the Council did not show: wisdom and compassion. The pillar of light shifted again, and new images appeared. They showed Ambassador Ji-woo speaking before the Council, showed her warnings being dismissed, showed her frustration and concern. Your species detected the anomalies my presence creates. Your scientists studied them carefully. Your leaders recommended caution and further study. When ignored, you still attempted to mount a rescue operation, knowing you might face the same fate as the Council fleet. This shows growth. This shows potential. Sung-min looked at Daehyun with amazement. We're passing the test. Just by being careful and trying to help others. You have not yet passed, the architect corrected. But you have not failed either. You are being given the opportunity that the Council was not. The opportunity to understand before you are judged. Daehyun felt the weight of 2 million lives pressing down on him. What do you want from us? I want to know if humanity is ready to lead. The Galactic Council is old, set in its ways, unable to adapt or change. They rule through tradition and force, not through wisdom. If the Council species are released, they will return to their old patterns. The galaxy will continue to stagnate under their leadership. And if humanity leads instead, then perhaps the galaxy will grow. Perhaps it will learn. Perhaps it will become what the precursors hoped to be but failed to achieve. The Oram shook her head in disbelief. You're offering us control of the Council? That's not something we want? We're not conquerors. I am not offering conquest, the architect said. I am offering responsibility. The Council fleet will be returned to their species. But the cost of their return will be an acknowledgement that their approach to leadership has failed. You, humanity, warned them of danger. They ignored you. You came to rescue them. They would have abandoned you. The galaxy has seen this. The question is, what happens next? Daehyun felt like he was standing on the edge of a precipice. This entity, this architect, was offering humanity a chance to reshape galactic civilization, but it was also a trap of sorts. If they accepted, they would be responsible for 73 different species, thousands of worlds, trillions of lives. If we refuse? He asked, then the Council fleet remains in stasis until their own people demonstrate the wisdom to lead themselves. This could take centuries. In that time, the galactic order would collapse. Wars would begin. Species would suffer. But humanity would not be responsible for preventing that suffering. That's not a choice, Sung-min said angrily. That's blackmail. It is a test, the architect replied calmly. The precursors designed me to present species with difficult choices, to see if they would choose comfort over responsibility, to see if they would choose safety over duty. Tell me, Captain, would you abandon 2 million people to an indefinite sleep because the responsibility of saving them seems too heavy? Sung-min opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. He looked at Dae-hyun helplessly. Dae-hyun thought about Ambassador Ji-woo, standing before the council and trying to save them despite their contempt. He thought about the human scouts who had detected the danger and the scientists who had studied it carefully. He thought about the 50 ships of their rescue fleet, waiting outside this structure, ready to face whatever danger came rather than abandon people in need. We're not ready to lead the galaxy, he said honestly. We've been in space for barely a century. We make mistakes. We're still learning. Yes, agreed the architect. But you know that you are still learning. The council believes they have already learned everything. Which species do you believe has more potential for growth? What would this leadership entail? Ram asked. What would you expect humanity to do? For the next century, Earth would guide the Galactic Council's military and exploratory operations. You would teach them what you know about caution, preparation, and adaptation. You would share your approach to unknown dangers. In return, they would share their accumulated knowledge, their technology, their resources, and after a century, we would see if the lesson has been learned. If the council species have grown, they would resume their own leadership, changed and improved. If they have not grown, then the arrangement would continue. Dae-hyun looked at his companions. Sung-min looked overwhelmed. 1 month had passed since the architect returned the council fleet. The grand chamber of the Galactic Council had never been so full or so tense. Every representative was present, and behind them the chamber was packed with observers from across the galaxy. This session was being broadcast to every council world, watched by trillions of citizens who wanted to know what had happened to their military fleet. Admiral Dae-hyun stood next to Ambassador Ji-woo at the speaking platform. He wore his formal uniform, the one with all his medals and commendations. Beside them stood Captain Sung-min, representing the rescue fleet that had brought the council ships home. Council Prime Veltharus sat on his high platform, but he looked different now. His purple scales had faded to a lighter shade, and his eyes no longer held their cold confidence. The month he had spent in stasis, learning from the architect about the dangers of arrogance, had changed him. All the council fleet crew members had changed. Ambassador Ji-woo, Admiral Dae-hyun, Veltharus began, his voice quiet and respectful. On behalf of the Galactic Council and all species represented here, I wish to formally apologize for our treatment of Earth and our dismissal of your warnings. A murmur ran through the chamber. Many representatives looked uncomfortable. Public apologies were rare in council politics. We were arrogant, Veltharus continued. We believed our age and experience made us superior to younger species. We ignored legitimate warnings because they came from a civilization we considered beneath us. This arrogance led to the disappearance of 5,000 ships and 2 million crew members. It could have led to war between our member species. It could have destroyed the council entirely. He stood up slowly, an old being admitting his mistakes. Earth sent a rescue fleet, risking their own people to save ours. They succeeded where we had failed. They approached the unknown with caution and wisdom while we approached it with aggression and pride. The entity you encountered, the architect, has shown us the error of our ways. Now we must decide, what kind of council do we wish to be moving forward? Ji-woo stepped forward. She had spent the last month in constant communication with Earth's government, discussing the architect's proposal. She had spoken with scientists, military leaders, philosophers, and ordinary citizens. The debate had been intense, but humanity had reached a decision. Council members, she said, her voice clear and strong. The architect presented Earth with an offer. For the next 100 years, humanity would lead the Council's military and exploratory operations. We would share our approaches to unknown dangers and preparation for the unexpected. In return, Council species would share their knowledge and technology with us. Another murmur, this one louder. Some representatives looked angry. Others looked thoughtful. Many on Earth wanted to refuse this offer, Jiwoo continued honestly. We are a young species. We have been in space for barely a century. We have made many mistakes and will make many more. We do not believe we are superior to any species here. We do not want to conquer or rule. Then why accept the architect's proposal? Asked a representative from the crystalline species. Because 2 million lives were at stake, Luwu replied. Because the alternative was watching the council collapse into war and chaos. Because sometimes responsibility chooses us, and we must rise to meet it whether we feel ready or not. Dae-Hyeon took over the presentation. But we have conditions. This will not be Earth ruling over the council. This will be a partnership. A sharing of knowledge and approaches. We will not make decisions alone. Every action will be discussed, debated, and agreed upon by council members. He activated a holographic display showing a new organizational structure. We propose a joint species command for all military and exploratory operations. Earth will provide the overall strategic direction, but every mission will include representatives from multiple species. We will teach you our methods. You will teach us yours. Together, we will develop approaches that are better than any single species could create alone. Seung-min stepped forward, his youth and energy a contrast to the older leaders around him. The architect's test was not about military power or technological advancement. It was about wisdom, about knowing when to be cautious and when to act, about putting the safety of others before pride. Earth passed this test not because we are better than you, but because we are younger. We remember what it is like to be uncertain. We have not forgotten how to be careful. A representative from the insectoid Thesa species stood up. Her name was Counselor Thesa, and she had been one of the few who had not laughed at Earth's original warning. I have reviewed the records from your rescue operation. Your fleet was outnumbered 100 to 1 compared to our Grand Armada. Yet you succeeded where we failed. How? Preparation, Dae-Hyeon answered simply. We deployed communication buoys so we could maintain contact with Earth. We moved slowly and watched for danger. We studied what we found before making decisions. We accepted that we did not understand what we were facing, and we planned accordingly. These are not complicated techniques, Thesa observed. No, they are not, agreed Dae-Hyeon. But they require something the Council fleet did not have, the humility to admit we might be wrong. The willingness to proceed carefully even when it seems unnecessary. The understanding that the universe is larger than our knowledge of it. Veltharus spoke again. The architect told our crew something during our time in stasis. It said that the precursor civilization created it as a test for themselves. They knew they had become so powerful that they risked losing their wisdom. They knew that power without wisdom leads to destruction. So they created an honest test, one they ultimately failed. He looked around at the gathered representatives. We have been given a second chance. The question is, will we accept it with grace, or will we repeat the same patterns that led to our failure? For a long moment, silence filled the chamber. Then Counselor Thesa stood again. I support Earth's proposal. The Thesa delegation votes yes. Another representative stood, then another. One by one, species that had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years voted to accept guidance from a civilization that had been in space for less than a century. Not all agreed. Some species refused, their pride too strong to bend. But the majority voted yes, recognizing that survival was more important than ego. When the vote was complete, Jiwoo felt a mix of relief and terror. Earth had just accepted responsibility for guiding galactic civilization. The weight of that responsibility was enormous. 3 days later, a ceremony was held to mark the new arrangement. In the Grand Plaza outside the council chamber, representatives from all species gathered as Earth's flag was raised alongside the council's banner. It was a simple flag, a blue and white circle representing Earth, surrounded by stars representing humanity's hopes for the future. Admiral Daehyun stood on the platform, watching the flags rise. Beside him, Seung-min had tears in his eyes. "We did it," Seung-min whispered. "We actually did it." "We started it," Daehyun corrected gently. "Now comes the hard part. Living up to what we promised." Wu joined them on the platform. She had been named the first director of the Joint Species Command, a position that would consume the rest of her career. The first joint mission is already being planned. A survey of the galactic rim. 6 ships, 2 from Earth, 4 from Council species. They'll test whether we can actually work together. "They will," said a new voice. Counselor Thesa approached them, her insectoid features making her emotions hard to read, but her tone was warm. "My species has already volunteered one of our vessels. We are eager to learn these human techniques of caution and preparation. And we are eager to learn from your species' experience," Kuwu replied. "This partnership only works if knowledge flows both ways." Thesa made a gesture that BOREM had taught the Earth delegation meant agreement. "The architect tested us and found us wanting. It tested you and found you worthy. But I think the real test is just beginning. Can we truly change? Can we learn from species younger than ourselves? Can we put aside 10,000 years of tradition to embrace new ideas?" "I hope so," said Daehyun. "Because if we cannot, the galaxy has a difficult future ahead." Far away, in the depths of the void sector, the architect observed the ceremony through sensors it had placed throughout Council space. It watched as humans and aliens worked together to raise their flags. It noted the genuine cooperation beginning to form. Between species that had previously existed in a strict hierarchy, the test had been administered. Humanity had passed. The Council species were being given a chance to learn. Whether they would actually change remained to be seen. Deep within the massive sphere, in chambers filled with stasis pods, the precursors continued their long sleep. They had failed their own test 2 million years ago, choosing power over wisdom. But perhaps, watching through the architect's sensors, they could see that another species was making different choices. Perhaps one day, when wisdom truly surpassed power in the galaxy, the precursors would awaken. Until then, they would remain eternal students of the lesson they had created for themselves on Earth. In a small apartment in Seoul, a young girl named Mi-sun watched the ceremony on her video screen. She was only 10 years old, but she understood that something important was happening.